Let me tell you something about humans that nobody bothered to mention in the Galactic Academy's xenobiology courses. Not one single lecture covered this particular fact, and believe me, I checked twice after what happened. Humans, they're small, fragile looking. Their bones snap easier than a ventraki's temper, their skin tears like cheap synthetic fabric, and they need an atmosphere so specific that half the galaxy considers their homeworld a death trap. So naturally, when I saw one sitting alone in the cafeteria of Station Kepler 9, I thought, easy target. Yeah, about that. My name's Thorvik, and I'm what you'd call a Krundar. We're big. 7 feet of muscle, scales that can deflect low-caliber weapons, and a reputation that makes most species step aside when we walk through a corridor. We've got the kind of natural advantages that make bullying, well, not exactly a challenge. And I was young, stupid, and convinced that my size made me important. The human was sitting by herself, which should have been my first warning sign. See, humans rarely travel alone. They're pack creatures, social to the point of being clingy, and they get weird when they're isolated. But there she was, at a corner table, eating something that looked suspiciously like it might still be moving, completely absorbed in a datapad. Her bag, this worn fabric thing covered in colorful patches and scribbled writing, sat on the chair next to her. It looked old, used, the kind of object that meant something. I should have walked away. Hey, Pinkskin, I called out, using the standard Krundar insult for mammals. My buddies Grell and Voss snickered behind me. That seat taken. She looked up, and I got my first good look at her face. Young, maybe early 20s in human years. Dark hair pulled back, exposing these strange little ears that didn't even twitch. Her eyes were brown, warm-colored, completely non-threatening. She glanced at the bag, then back at me. Actually, yes, she said, her voice calm, too calm. My bag's sitting there. Oh, this was perfect. See, when you're a bully, you live for moments like this. The setup, the audience, the inevitable backing down. Your bag, I repeated slowly, like I was explaining physics to a child, doesn't need a seat. Neither do you, she said, returning her attention to the datapad. But here we are. Grell laughed nervously. Voss shifted his weight. The human just kept eating, like I wasn't looming over her table, like my shadow wasn't completely blocking her light. Now here's what you need to understand about Krundar pride. We don't handle dismissal well. Being ignored. That's worse than being challenged. It implies you're not even worth the concern, and my scales were already flushing that dark purple color that means we're getting angry. I wasn't asking, human, and I wasn't offering. Lizard. The cafeteria went quiet, not completely silent, but that particular kind of hush that means everyone's suddenly very interested in their food while simultaneously watching everything. She called me a lizard, a Krundar warrior class, descendant of the siege masters of Krundar Prime, the species with 3 centuries of military dominance. I grabbed her bag. It was childish, I know, but I was 19 standard years old. I had an audience, and this tiny human had just insulted my entire genetic lineage. So I grabbed that worn, patch-covered bag, and I held it up like a trophy. What are you going to do about it? I asked, grinning enough to show all my teeth. Krundar have a lot of teeth. She stood up, slowly, carefully, like she was giving herself time to think through several different options. The human was maybe 5.5 feet tall, probably weighed less than my left leg, and had exactly 0 visible weapons or armor. She looked at me, then at her bag, then back at me. Give it back, she said quietly. Make me pink skin? She smiled, actually smiled. Looking back, that should have been my second warning sign. Humans don't smile when they're scared. They smile when they're about to do something incredibly stupid or incredibly dangerous, and sometimes both. Okay, she said. Then she grabbed her bag. Not pulled, grabbed, both hands on the strap, standing there like she was actually planning to play tug-of-war with someone 3 times her size. I laughed, gave the bag a yank to teach her a lesson about physics and weight classes. It didn't move. I pulled harder. This tiny human, This fragile-looking mammal that probably couldn't bench press her own body weight was holding onto that bag like it was welded to her hands. Her feet weren't even sliding. How was she not sliding? "Let go," I demanded, now actually trying, putting real effort into it. "You first," she said cheerfully. Then she twisted. I don't know what she did exactly, some kind of rotation of her wrists that suddenly changed the angle of force, and the bag strap yanked sideways. I stumbled, off balance, which wasn't supposed to be possible because Krunda have a lower center of gravity than most species, but somehow this human had. She stepped forward, into my space. Too close. Way too close for someone who should have been backing away. "You know what this is?" she asked, holding up the bag. Her voice was still calm, but something had changed in her eyes. Something that made my survival instincts, buried deep under layers of cocky teenage stupidity, suddenly start screaming. This was my grandmother's. She carried it through medical school, then through 40 years of emergency medicine, then gave it to me before she died. It's got a name embroidered inside. It's got coffee stains from my first all-nighter. It's got a patch my little brother made me before I shipped out here. She paused, and her smile got wider. Not friendlier, wider. "So when you grabbed it, you didn't just grab my property, you grabbed my history, my family, my memories." "It's just a bag," I muttered, but I was already trying to figure out how to back down without losing face. "Oh, you're absolutely right," she said. "It's just a bag, which means what I'm about to do is just self-defense." What happened next took maybe 3 seconds. Maybe 4. Honestly, the station's security footage had to slow it down to quarter speed before the medical staff could figure out what she'd done. She yanked the bag down and to the side, using my own grip against me, pulling me forward and off balance. As I stumbled, she stepped past my center of gravity, pivoted on one foot with this weird human flexibility that Krundar joints simply don't have, and swung the bag in a wide arc that built up momentum like a medieval flail. The bag's handle, reinforced with some kind of metal core for durability, caught my left arm just above the elbow joint. There was a sound like a branch snapping. Then the pain hit. I went down hard, screaming words in Krundar that would have gotten me expelled from the academy if any professors had been present. My arm, my scales, my warrior-class genetics, none of it had mattered. She'd broken my arm with a fabric bag full of data pads and protein bars and whatever else humans carry around. She stood over me, not even breathing hard, that bag hanging from her hand like nothing had happened. "Station security's gonna be here in about 30 seconds, she said, conversationally. "When they ask what happened, you're gonna tell them you slipped. Understand?" I nodded, tears leaking from my eyes because broken Krundar bones hurt more than anything I'd ever felt, including that time I'd gotten bit by a Ventrike war dog during training exercises. "Good," she said, then looked at Grell and Voss, who'd backed up about 6 feet during the whole exchange. "Anybody else want to try?" They shook their heads so fast I thought their necks might snap. She sat back down, picked up her eating utensil, resumed reading her datapad like she hadn't just shattered every assumption I'd had about human fragility. Security did show up. 2 Ventrike guards who took one look at me, one look at her, and then very carefully asked what happened. "He slipped," I gasped out, because I'd already learned more about humans in 5 minutes than the entire Galactic Academy had taught me in 4 years. They logged it as an accident. The medical team set my arm, gave me something for the pain and asked no further questions, because station politics meant nobody wanted to file assault charges over a bag-related incident. But here's the thing. That wasn't even the worst part. The worst part came 3 days later, after the pain meds wore off and I was left with an arm in a regeneration cast that itched like a Xanthari sandflea colony had taken up residence under my scales. I was sitting in the station's medical waiting area, waiting for my follow-up scan, when she walked in. The human. The bag-wielding menace who'd shattered my arm and my ego in one smooth motion. She saw me, made direct eye contact, and walked straight toward me. Every instinct I had screamed to run, but my legs had apparently decided they were on vacation because they didn't move. She sat down in the chair next to mine, set that cursed bag on her lap, and pulled out a data pad. "How's the arm?" she asked, not looking up. "Fine," I croaked, which was a lie. It hurt like someone was slowly peeling off my scales one at a time, but I wasn't about to admit that to her. "Good. Regeneration casts work fast on Krunda bone structure. You'll be completely healed in what, another week?" How did she know that? I stared at her, trying to figure out if this was some kind of elaborate threat or if she was genuinely asking about my medical recovery. "Yeah," I said carefully. "Week and a half, maybe." She nodded, made a note on her data pad, and kept typing. We sat there in silence for maybe 30 seconds, which felt like 30 years before she spoke again. "You know what I do here? On the station?" "No," I admitted, because honestly, I'd never bothered to learn anything about her, except that she was human and alone and therefore vulnerable. Funny how wrong you can be about literally everything. "I'm a comparative biomechanics researcher," she said, finally looking at me. "I study how different species move, fight, and interact with their environments. It's boring stuff, mostly. Lots of numbers, force calculations, joint angles, that kind of thing." I waited, because this felt like the setup to something, and humans loved their setups. They called it building tension, or narrative structure, or some other creative nonsense that most species found exhausting. "So when you grabbed my bag," she continued, "I'd already spent 6 months studying Krunda physiology. I knew exactly where your center of gravity was. I knew your elbow joint flexes inward at 45 degrees, but has almost no lateral rotation. I knew your scales provide excellent protection against impact, but do nothing for torsional stress. And I knew that if I hit you at exactly the right angle, with exactly the right amount of force, I could break your arm without causing any permanent damage." She paused, and that smile came back. The scary one. "I calculated the entire thing in about 2 seconds. Want to know the funny part?" "Not really," I muttered. "The funny part is that you thought you were the predator. Big scary Krunda, pushing around the weak little human. But predators study their prey. They learn patterns, weaknesses, vulnerabilities. I'd been watching you and your friends bully people for 2 weeks. I knew eventually you'd try something with me." My blood went cold. Well, colder. Krunda are naturally cold-blooded, but you know what I mean. You planned it." "I prepared for it," she corrected. "There's a difference. See, humans don't like bullies. We've got this weird psychological thing where we instinctively protect the underdog. Probably because we spent most of our evolutionary history being the underdog. So when I saw you 3 picking on that Pixith kid last week, making him drop his food, laughing at him, yeah, I started paying attention. The Pixith kid, small aquatic species, barely 4 feet tall, couldn't hurt a glowworm if it tried. We'd been messing with him because we could. Because that's what bullies do. I didn't prepare that bag as a weapon," she continued, "but I made sure I knew how to use it as one if I needed to. Because that's what humans do. We assess threats, we calculate odds, and we prepare for the worst-case scenario. You call it paranoia. We call it Tuesday." A medical technician called her name. She stood up, shouldered that innocent-looking bag of destruction, and looked down at me. "Your friends haven't bothered anyone in 3 days," she said. "Funny how that works. Maybe they learned something. Question is, did you?" She walked toward the examination room, then paused and looked back. "Oh, and Thorvik? That thing I said about the bag being my grandmother's? About the patches and the memories and all that emotional stuff?" I nodded slowly. "Completely made up. I bought this bag at a station market 2 months ago for 15 credits. But you believed it, didn't you? Because humans are really, really good at making you believe things. It's kind of our specialty." Then she was gone, leaving me sitting there with my broken arm and my shattered worldview. I spent the next week thinking, actually thinking, not just reacting, which was apparently something I should have tried earlier. I thought about what she'd said, about predators and prey, about preparation and calculation. I thought about the Pixith kid whose name I didn't even know. I thought about all the times I'd used my size and my scales and my species' reputation to make other people feel small. Turned out when you actually paid attention to the thoughts rattling around in your head, some of them were pretty ugly. The day my cast came off, I went looking for her. Found her in one of the station's observation decks, sitting by herself again, staring out at the stars while eating something that looked like it was actively trying to escape her plate. "Can I sit?" I asked. She glanced at the empty chairs around her. The deck was mostly empty, dozens of open seats, and I was specifically asking to sit near her. "Sure," she said, curiosity flickering across her face. I sat, carefully, keeping my distance. We watched the stars in silence for a while. A cargo ship drifted past, running lights blinking in the darkness. "I'm sorry," I finally said. "For which part? Grabbing my bag, calling me pink-skin, or being a generally terrible person?" "All of it," I admitted. "But mostly for being terrible." She set down her eating utensil and actually looked at me. Really looked, like she was trying to see past the scales and the size to whatever passed for a decent person underneath. "You know what the hardest part about humans is?" she asked. "For other species, I mean. The fact that you're terrifyingly good at breaking things." She laughed, and it was a nice sound. Warm. Nothing like the cold calculation I'd heard in her voice 3 days ago. "No. It's that we forgive. We're really stupidly good at forgiving people who genuinely want to change. It's gotten us killed more times than I can count, across our entire history, but we keep doing it anyway, because we believe people can be better than they were." She picked up her datapad, pulled up something and showed me the screen. It was a file on Krinder's social development, specifically the section on adolescent aggression patterns. "You're 19, she said. "Your species doesn't fully develop impulse control until around 25. You're literally biologically predisposed to make stupid, aggressive decisions right now. Doesn't excuse it, but it explains it." "You studied my species' development patterns?" "I study everyone's development patterns. It's literally my job." She put the datapad away. "Look, you did a crappy thing," I responded with violence, which wasn't great either, although in my defense you started it. "But here's the thing, you came looking for me. You apologized. That took courage, especially after I'd humiliated you in front of half the station. I deserved it." "Yeah, you really did," she smiled, and this time it reached her eyes. "But deserving consequences and learning from them are two different things. So here's my question. What did you learn?" I thought about it. Really thought about it. That size doesn't matter, as much as I thought it did. That humans are way more dangerous than they look. That I was using my advantages to hurt people, instead of, I don't know, doing something useful with them. "Good start," she said. "Want to know what else?" "Sure. That everyone's got a bag. Maybe not literally, but everyone's carrying something that matters to them. Memories, pride, dignity, hope. And when you're a bully, you're not just messing with people, you're messing with their bags. You're threatening the things they carry that make them who they are." She stood up, grabbed her actual bag, the 15-credit weapon of mass humiliation.
"I've got work to do." "But Thorvik?"
"That Pixith kid you were bothering? His name's Quilven. He's studying quantum mechanics, he's homesick, and he's lonely. Maybe instead of making his life harder, you could try making it easier. Use that big scary Krundar presence for something other than being intimidating." "Like what?" "I don't know. Walk into his quarters sometimes. Most species don't mess with people who've got a Krundar escort. Sit with him at meals. Be the kind of person you wish you'd been 3 weeks ago." She started to leave, then paused. "And Thorvik? If you ever grab someone's stuff again without permission, I've got a reinforced metal water bottle that's just begging to demonstrate advanced physics concepts on your skull. We clear, Crystal?" I said, then caught myself. Wait, no, not crystal. That's apparently a word humans overuse. We're good, we're clear. I understand, yes. She laughed again, and walked away, leaving me alone with the stars and a completely new understanding of what it meant to be strong. That was 8 months ago. These days I walk Quilven to his classes. Not every day, but enough that the other bullies, the ones who haven't learned what I learned, leave him alone. I've apologized to the other people I messed with. Some accepted it. Some told me where I could shove my apology. I deserved both reactions. I've also started sitting in on some of the humans' lectures. Turns out comparative biomechanics is actually interesting when you're not being a self-absorbed idiot. She teaches about leverage, force distribution, and how smaller species can overcome larger ones through technique and knowledge. She's never let me forget about the bag incident. Last week she gave a whole lecture on improvised defensive tools and used our encounter as a case study. The entire class laughed. I laughed too, because honestly it was pretty funny when you weren't the one with the broken arm. But here's what I've really learned about humans. They're not scary because they're strong. They're scary because they're smart, adaptable, and they never stop calculating odds. They look at a situation and see possibilities where other species see limitations. They turn bags into weapons, weakness into strategy, and somehow convince you that forgiveness is strength instead of stupidity. And the scariest part, they're usually right. I saw her this morning in the cafeteria. She was sitting alone again, bag on the chair next to her, reading a datapad. I walked past with Quilvan, who was telling me about some quantum equation that might as well have been ancient poetry for all I understood it, and she looked up. She smiled. A real smile, the warm kind, not the calculating one. I nodded back, and I kept walking, because I'd finally learned the most important lesson of all. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is leave people alone. Respect their space. Acknowledge their boundaries. Treat their bags, literal and metaphorical, like they matter, because they do. Turns out, the galaxy's a lot less hostile when you're not going around making it worse. Who knew? Oh right, the humans knew. They always know. And that, more than anything else, is why you don't mess with them.